Asahi was a lonely loser who was on track to dying as a hopeless virgin. However, everything changed when his father pimps him 5 baddies for his birthday, and he has to choose the best waifu among them. One morning before heading to school, Asahi sat in the living room watching a fortune-telling show. The show was hosted by an AI who predicted that those born on the 18th of October would have a lucky day. Coincidentally, Asahi was born that day, so he listened closely as the fortune teller listed the lucky words for the day. A little while later, Asahi rushed out of his house and had an unlucky day unlike the fortune teller predicted. First, at a corner he bumped into a girl who fell on top of him and nearly exposed her chamber of secrets to him. The embarrassed girl quickly got off him and shyly apologized before running off when she noticed the time. After she left, Asahi noticed she'd left something behind, so he picked it up. Next, he boarded a train with a green-haired watermelon ambassador who sat beside him despite the empty train. This freaked him out, but she soon dozed off, so he relaxed slightly. Unfortunately, his relaxation was short-lived because the sleeping beauty suddenly put her head on his shoulder and grabbed his hand when he tried to move away. Her grip was so strong that when he forcefully detached himself from her, they both fell on the floor. Somehow, Asahi fell on top of her and accidentally grabbed her knockers. Just then, the girl opened her eyes and mistook him for a dirty degenerate, so she attempted to kick his head off his body. Fortunately, his ultra instinct abilities activated and saved him from getting his head smashed. However, he was scared, so when the train pulled into the next station, he ran for his life. The third unlucky thing that happened to him was a girl missing a step on the stairs and falling on him. Instead of thanking Asahi for cushioning her fall, the girl accused him of being a disgusting sleazeball. This was because she assumed he'd gotten aroused by their position when she noticed something thick and hard between his legs, since she wasn't aware that what she saw was a real banana. She punched his crotch and walked away. Later, Asahi was accused of reprogramming a cleaning robot to swipe underwear for him, even though he swore he was innocent. The girl who owned the bra the robot took didn't believe him and kept calling him names. Fortunately, she didn't get to injure him because the malfunctioning robot dragged her away after mistaking her for trash. As he continued to school, he encountered a stray dog trying to violate a boy. Not wanting to be dragged into the mess, Asahi pretended not to see anything. Unfortunately, the dog noticed him, so it chased after him, and since he didn't help the boy earlier, the boy refused to help him too. The incident with the dog caused Asahi to arrive late at school, so he snuck into his classroom through the back door to avoid being seen by the teacher. Once settled in his seat, he realized the new teacher was the person he encountered on the train earlier. As if that wasn't bad enough, the other 3 girls he bumped into and the boy he refused to help were also seated in the class. The teacher's name was Mongfa, the corner girl was named Aoi, the stairs girl was named Corinne, the bra girl was named Amelia, and the dog boy was named Ilya. Ashe couldn't believe his terrible luck and tried to hide his face from them, but Mongfa noticed him. She reprimanded him for sneaking into the classroom after arriving late and demanded that he face her. Asahi did as she ordered, but made a funny face so he wouldn't be recognized. Unfortunately, he couldn't hold his face for long, and once they recognized him, they each slapped him. Later, during PE class, Asahi explained to his friend Yoshio why he'd been slapped. Yoshio then advised him to clarify things with Mongfa and the others to avoid future problems. After the class, Asahi found a letter sticking out of his locker. Whoever had sent the letter asked him to meet them under the cherry blossom trees after school. Asahi wondered who the sender might be, but decided to worry about it later as he hurried to get somewhere. On his way, he almost bumped into Aoi for the second time that day, but fortunately, he didn't. After apologizing, Aoi shyly asked if he'd seen anything on the ground after her hasty departure that morning. Asahi immediately understood what she was referring to, so he put his hand in his pocket to retrieve it. Unfortunately, what he pulled out was Amelia's bra, which he hadn't realized he'd taken. Upon seeing this, Aoi concluded he was an insole-brained pig with an underwear fetish, so she slapped him before walking away. Later, Asahi ran into Corinne, Ilya, Mongfa, and Amelia at different times and places. During each encounter, they apologized for misjudging him earlier that day, and he accepted their apologies. When school ended, Yoshio asked Asahi if he'd cleared the misunderstandings. Asahi told him yes, but said he was yet to sort things out with Aoi, as she still believed he was degenerate. As he stood up to leave, the letter from earlier fell out of his desk, so out of curiosity, he decided to go to the meeting place. To his surprise, Aoi showed up, so he pulled out her underwear, which he'd mistaken for her handkerchief, and tried to give it to her. However, Aoi ignored his outstretched hand and suddenly said she liked him. The next moment, a gust of wind blew Aoi's skirt up, and once Asahi saw that she was commando underneath it, he realized what he had in his hand was her underwear. Shocked by this discovery, he let go of the underwear, allowing it to be carried away by the wind. Unaware of what was happening, Aoi continued declaring her love for him until he cut her off. It so happened that the shock of seeing her clear landing strip It made the dumb idiot assume she was talking about her love for going commando. He then started telling her that he wouldn't judge her for her choice of comfort, which left Aoi very confused. It wasn't until he pointed out her lack of underwear that she realized what was happening. Aoi was so embarrassed that she ran away without clearing up the misunderstanding. As Asahi began walking home, he was approached by Ilya, who confessed to Asahi that he liked him, shocking him. Asahi immediately told the boy that he didn't like lollipops, but when he saw the look on Ilya's face, he started reconsidering his preference. Mongfa rushed over to them the next moment and dragged Asahi away, saying she needed his help. They ran until they arrived at an alley where Mongfa surprised Asahi by sucking on his neck. She did this to make the low-budget men in black chasing her believe they had stumbled upon a young couple. Once the men were gone, she let go of Asahi and apologized for her actions. Afterwards, she explained that the men chasing her worked for a guy trying to woo her. Asahi admitted that he didn't mind that she used him in the way that she did because he secretly had a thing for MILFs. However, he advised her to only engage in intimate acts with the person she liked. To his surprise, Mongfa responded that she liked him, which freaked Asahi out so much that he ran away. He hadn't made it very far when Karen suddenly appeared in a wedding dress and started chasing him. When she finally caught him, she told him she'd dressed up like that because she liked him and wanted to marry him. Asahi stared at her, wondering if he should call Arkham Asylum to tell them that one of their residents was missing. Unaware of his thoughts, Karen dragged him away, saying they would be late to exchange their vows. Instead of taking him to a church, this delusional airhead took him to one of the love motels owned by a pimp named Slickback. Of course, Asahi complained, but he soon realized it was pointless, so he tricked her into closing her eyes and then ran away. As he continued his seemingly endless journey home, he came across Amelia, who was wearing a disguise. She asked him to fill out a survey form, which he began filling until he realized it was a marriage registration form and tossed it away. Amelia then took off her disguise, and when Asahi realized she was the one, he screamed at her to leave him alone. He then went home annoyed, hoping to relax after the crazy day he'd had. Unfortunately, he couldn't do that because when he arrived at his house, he found Mongfa, Ilya, Amelia, Karin and Aoi waiting for him. They welcomed him home and then played an audio message from his father. In the message, his father informed him that the 4 girls and Ilya were candidates to become his bride. Asahi was expected to live with them until he was ready to choose one of them to be his bride. The only thing he wasn't allowed to do was clap them. After the recording finished playing, Asahi ordered them to leave, saying they couldn't stay with him because his house only had 1 bedroom. They then informed him that the house had 6 bedrooms, and that was when he realized that the house had been modified while he was at school. Having no choice, he agreed to let them stay, which made them happy. However, after dinner, they showed Asahi that they didn't understand the meaning of boundaries. This was because Amelia hid in the bathtub while he was taking a bath, and when he retired for the night, he noticed Mongfa hanging from the ceiling like Spider-Man. Annoyed, he summoned everyone to the living room and complained about their presence suffocating him. Since he couldn't kick them out, he decided to leave instead, but he went to the nearby shrine because he had nowhere to go. Aoi found him there later and apologized for what she and the others had done, after which she begged him to return home. She assured him they would leave to give him peace of mind, but Asahi knew they had nowhere else to go. He then told her they could stay if they promised not to drive him crazy, and she assured him that things would be different. After hearing his confirmation, Asahi smiled, triggering the memory of a younger version of himself in Aoi's mind, which for some reason made her cry. A little while later, when they returned home, they found the others at the door preparing to leave, so Asahi informed them that they could stay, which made them happy. A week later at school, their class had a kanji lesson and Amelia was called to answer a question. Unfortunately, her kanji knowledge was poor, so she got the answer wrong. After the lesson, the teacher announced that they would have a kanji test the following week, which made the students grumble. That evening after dinner, Asahi noticed Amelia wasn't in the kitchen helping the others clean up, so he went to check on her. As he approached her door, he heard sounds similar to happy noises. Asahi was shocked as he assumed Amelia was in the middle of a DJing session. However, after he listened closely, he realized she was reading a very detailed and naughty book out loud. He then barged into the room to confront her about her book choices. To his surprise, her room was filled with kanji writings, and after he took her tablet, he discovered that she'd been studying for their kanji test. The only problem was her choice of study material, a pure and unadulterated spicy novel. When Asahi pointed it out, Amelia said there was nothing wrong with her learning kanji from books she enjoyed reading. However, she expressed frustration at not understanding kanji, even though she tried so hard. Asahi felt sorry after hearing this, so he took Amelia to the library the next day to help her study. He tested her kanji knowledge and discovered that the only kanji she could write were those she learned from her spicy novels. This prompted him to give her a study guide, which instructed her to read properly. Amelia took his advice seriously and started using every spare time she had to study her kanji, which made Asahi worried about her health. One afternoon, while she was studying in the library with Asahi, he suggested that she rest, stating that no one would criticize her if she failed the test. This angered Amelia, and she told him that to her, trying and not succeeding was the same as not trying at all. The next moment, tears filled her eyes, and she said she only wanted to learn his language. She ran off before he could say anything, leaving him feeling very bad. Later that night, Asahi found her sitting in the dark, so he turned on the lights and went to sit beside her. When he attempted to apologize for the insensitive statement he made at the library, she told him to get lost. Asahi was prepared to do as she asked, but when he noticed she was crying, he decided to stay and listen to everything she said. When she was done speaking, he encouraged her to keep trying as he admired her determination and effort. Hearing him say those words unlocked a memory which she chose not to speak about. She returned to being the annoying Amelia he was used to, so he gave her the study cards he made to help her study. Amelia took the cards and thanked him for them, promising that she would cherish them. In the days leading up to the test, Amelia posted kanji on every wall and surface in the house, and everyone even helped her do some last-minute revisions. Finally, the test day came and went, and Amelia scored above average when the graded tests were returned, which she was very proud of. A few weeks later, Ilya, Aoi, and Monfa participated in a contest. Coincidentally, they all won the first prize, a hot spring vacation for two, so they invited Asahi, Kirin, and Amelia to go with them. When they arrived at the inn, they became worried because the place looked like somewhere Michael Myers would spend his vacation. As if that wasn't scary enough, the proprietress of the inn resembled the secret love child of Rumpelstiltskin and a giant, and she was as ugly as she was intimidating. The woman made the group uneasy, but they pushed those feelings aside and threw half-hearted compliments about the inn being lovely. When it was time to take them to their rooms, Asahi requested that she put him and Ilya in the same room since they were boys, and he wanted to be away from the girls. Later that night, they went to the hot springs to bathe after dinner. While they were in the changing room, Ilya felt uncomfortable removing his clothes in Asahi's presence because he didn't want Asahi to discover that he was a girl. Fortunately, Asahi left the changing room first and went to soak in the bath. Alone, Ilya looked around for something she could use to hide her secret, and that was when she spotted a Tenga mask hanging on the wall. After putting the mask on her crotch and covering the front of her body with a towel, Ilya went outside to join Asahi in the bath. When Asahi noticed the mask's nose between Ilya's legs, he suddenly felt like less of a man because he truly believed it was Aya's sausage. Asahi offered to scrub her back to avoid staring at Ilya's tool. While doing that, he noticed Ilya's skin was as smooth as a baby's butt and pointed it out. Immediately, Ilya panicked, thinking Asahi had discovered her secret. However, it wasn't the case, so she asked Asahi to let her scrub his back. As she scrubbed Asahi's back, she wasn't aware that her fake rod was poking Asahi's back until he pointed it out. Quickly, she pulled away and suggested they try out the sauna to deepen their male bond. After a few minutes in the sauna, Ilya was ready to leave. However, she felt that doing so would expose her secret, so she decided to brave the heat. As she sat there, hoping Asahi would leave, the Tenga mask started heating up, causing the heat in the sauna to double. When Asahi noticed what was happening, the dense fool assumed she was channeling heat from her member and declared she was the ultimate man before rushing out of the sauna to cool down in the water. Thankful that he'd left, Ilya came out of the sauna and went to the open-air bath to cool down. Unfortunately, while she was there, her towel fell and a light breeze blew it to the top of one of the stone structures. When she attempted to retrieve the towel, she heard Asahi approaching, so to protect her secret, she put on the Tenga mask. The moment Asahi opened the door, she pretended to be the Tenga spirit, and as expected, Asahi fell for her act since his functioning brain cells were fewer than his non-existent body count. Immediately, Asahi rushed back into the sauna to find Ilya and tell her what he saw. This allowed her to retrieve her towel and return to the indoor bath before he noticed she was gone. When he saw her, he told her he'd seen the Tenga spirit, and Ilya tried to feign surprise. As she turned to face him, she slipped on the soap Asahi knocked over during his mad dash, causing her to fall and hit her head. When she woke up, Asahi apologized for how he behaved when he thought she was a boy and asked why she'd hidden her true identity. Ilya explained that her father had always wanted a boy, so he made her dress like one, and before he died, he instructed her to keep living as one. This prompted Asahi to ask if she wanted to live as a boy or as a girl, and she admitted that she wanted to live as a girl. He then hugged her and told her to do so because it was her life, and she alone had the right to live however she wanted. As he said this, a memory of a younger Asahi popped into her head, but she didn't dwell on it. The following week, Ilya surprised everyone by dressing up as a girl and reintroducing herself as Irina. Later that week, after Asahi put a drunk Monfa to bed, he went to his bedroom. He noticed someone hiding under his blanket. When he stepped inside the room, thinking it was Amelia trying to trick him, he pulled the blanket off the bed so he could scold her. To his surprise, it wasn't Amelia lying in his bed, but a low-budget Arnold Schwarzenegger. The man then told Asahi that he was coming with him, and before he could react, he was knocked out cold. He later awoke in a dark room where he'd been stripped naked and tied up like the perfect gift for a sadist. As he struggled to untie his bonds, the screen in the room lit up, and the man who kidnapped him appeared on it. The man told him that he was being used as bait to lure Mongfa, and just before he could say more, he was informed that Mongfa was around. Mongfa came into Asahi's room a few minutes later, but before untying him, she took pictures. Asahi felt ashamed, but Mongfa encouraged him, saying he could become the next Johnny Sins if she posted the photos online. She then handed him a vibrator and some lube to use and defend himself. As they made their way to the exit, they encountered some men who tried to attack them, but thanks to Mongfa's martial arts skills, they were unharmed. Asahi also helped with his pleasure weapon, and when they arrived at the elevator and tried to get on it, they discovered it wasn't working. Using her artificial eye, Mongfa scanned the building to find the control room where they could fix the problem. After locating it, they attempted to take the stairs, but the door was locked, so Mongfa came up with an idea. She tied some bedsheets together and climbed down with Asahi. When they got to the window for the control room, she swung them like a pendulum ball until they broke the glass and re-entered the building. She quickly rushed to the controls and started pushing some buttons. And just as she got everything working again, the muscle daddy dramatically revealed himself to them. Mongfa demanded to know who he was, and he responded by saying he was surprised she couldn't remember him. He also referred to her as Bloody Tiger, and when he realized Asahi was unfamiliar with the name, he asked why she didn't want him to know her past. Suddenly, he attacked Mongfa, but she blocked his attack with a powerful barrier before pushing back. The man then explained to a confused Asahi that Mongfa was once a person everyone in the underworld feared the most. He said she wiped out countless organizations, the same way Itachi wiped out the Uchiha clan and earned herself the name Bloody Tiger. He added that his special task force wasn't spared from her wrath, and since he was the only one who survived, he vowed to get revenge. Soon after telling his story, he attacked Mongfa again, but she didn't fight him properly because she was worried about Asahi's safety. When he slammed her to the floor, Asahi tried to come to her, but she instructed him to run away. Asahi refused, so the man decided to attack him instead since he realized it would hurt Mongfa more if he did that. However, she didn't let him get close to Asahi and started attacking him again, landing a few hits this time. Still, she was overpowered, but as he held her up by her feet, Mongfa instructed Asahi to push the button that made the bed rotate. As soon as Asahi pushed the buttons and the bed began to rotate, the man was suddenly pulled along. That was when he realized that Mongfa had secretly tied him up with Doflamingo strings during their fight, and he couldn't break them. Using that opportunity, Mongfa and Asahi rushed to the elevator, and as they waited for the doors to open, Mongfa noticed Asahi was injured. This prompted her to tear a piece of her dress so she could use it to wrap the wound, and as she did that, she apologized to Asahi for dragging him into her mess. When the elevator arrived, they got on it and went down to the ground floor where a group of armed men opened fire on them. Mongfa easily took them out and then told Asahi to go home without her. Asahi tried to convince her to come with him, but she refused and even shot at him so he would leave. After he left, she took care of the remaining goons, and when she got outside, she broke down in tears. Unfortunately, she wasn't allowed to cry in peace because the Terminator jumped down from the control room and tried to smash her head. Mongfa was surprised to see that the muscle man was more or less an advanced cyborg clone. Even though it was pointless, she shot at him, but the bullets didn't penetrate his armor. He simply extended his arm and grabbed her neck before slowly walking towards her. Mongfa struggled to break free, but his grip was too strong, and he would have crushed her windpipe if Asahi hadn't thrown a fire extinguisher at his hand. Asahi then charged at the man, but when he swung his taser baton, the man caught it in his hand. He flung Asahi to the side, but Asahi's trust in his plot armor pushed him to get up and re-challenge the man. Seeing this unlocked a memory in Mongfa's head, so she screamed at Asahi to run away. But he stood his ground. When the man got closer, he grabbed Asahi's robe, which came off easily because Asahi had lubed himself up nicely to take him. Before the man could react, Asahi threw the rest of the lube on his body and then used the baton to shock him, giving lowly One Punch Man the chance to end the fight with a fatal blow. Once she was sure the man wasn't getting back up, Mongfa focused on Asahi and asked why he'd returned. He told her it was because he considered her part of his family, and his mentor Dominic Toretto always said that family was everything. Mongfa was so happy to hear him say this that she hugged and nearly suffocated him with her milkshakes, completely ignoring the fact that he was naked. Asahi managed to break free and then stretched his hand out for her to take so they could return home. Later, the other girls found them fast asleep on the couch and tried to understand why Asahi was slippery. A few days later, Asahi was on his way home from the store when a strange robot tried to cut off his family jewels. Fortunately, he was saved by someone he later realized was a magical girl. The next day at school, he told Yoshio about his encounter with the robot and the magical girl, but Yoshio didn't believe him and advised him to avoid smoking pot before coming to school in the morning. Asahi tried to convince his friend that he was telling the truth, but he was interrupted by Karen, who approached them and shamelessly asked him to let her ride his sausage. Both boys were shocked, and Asahi told her not to say such inappropriate things, but Karen said nothing was wrong with her request. The next moment, everyone's attention was drawn to a giant floating machine outside. As they all stared at it, a robot similar to the one that attacked Asahi the night before shot something into the classroom. Monfa quickly pushed Asahi out of the way, so poor Yoshio was the one who got hit. When he tried to remove the contraption encasing his crotch, it exploded. Immediately, Asahi and the girls rushed to ensure Yoshio was fine, but they discovered that his bat and balls were gone. Monfa ordered everyone to lay low while she took Yoshi to the clinic, but Irina pointed out that Karen was missing. Asahi went looking for her and found her on the rooftop, where she had just completed her transformation to the magical girl he had seen the previous night. Karen was surprised to see him, but a floating creature suddenly appeared before he could question her. The creature and Karen told Asahi they would explain everything later, and then asked him for help. Asahi asked what kind of help they wanted, and Karen told him she needed him to touch her melons. Like a true gentleman, Asahi refused, but the floating creature pushed in towards Karen, making him touch her chest to steady himself. Despite his earlier refusal, Asahi started groping Karen's natural stress balls. She then went to fight the floating machine, but unfortunately, she wasn't powerful enough to destroy it. Since she'd used up all her energy, she fell, but Asahi caught her before she could crash. He then took her to an empty classroom, where she told him how she met and made a contract with the creature, whose name was Sod, to become a magical girl. Sod explained that he came from another world, where the floating machine known as the Ball Taker had castrated all the males. He said they would do the same to all the males on Earth if they weren't stopped, and added the only person who could stop the machines was Karen, as modern weapons were useless against them. After explaining how Karen needed Asahi's help to gather enough power to defeat the machine, Sod took them to a special truck. He said the truck was designed to help them boost Karen's power, and then instructed them to go in before vanishing. When they entered the truck, and Karen unbuttoned her shirt, the dense idiot realized that he had to clap her to help her power up. Out of curiosity, Asahi asked how she'd been powering up so far, so she explained that she usually watched him while he was in the bath, and even sniffed his clothes like a creep to get her daily dose of power-ups. Asahi looked at Karen disgustedly before telling her they needed another method to help her power up, because he wouldn't dip his stick in her honey pot. However, Karen ignored him and then took off her clothes, leaving only her underwear on. Before Asahi could react, she pushed him onto the couch and stripped him down to his boxers. When he tried to reason with her, he heard Oi's voice outside the truck, telling the other girls that she heard Asahi's voice. Immediately, he tried to get her attention, but Karen clamped her hands over his mouth to keep him quiet as the other girls moved closer to Oi to inspect the truck. Since they didn't hear any sound and couldn't see inside the truck, they told Oi she most likely heard wrong. Monfa suggested that they return home as it wasn't safe to be outside, and they all turned to leave, but Oi, whose eyes were glowing red for some reason, lingered for a bit until Irina called out to her. After the girls left, Karen stripped Asahi and tried to gobble up his banana, but he smacked her on the head to halt her actions. Just then, Sod appeared in the van, thinking they had concluded the deed already, but was surprised to see Asahi giving Karen a lecture. The two didn't notice he was there as Asahi continued berating Karen for acting like a desperate hoe. He pointed out that the world being on the verge of destruction wasn't enough reason for her to lose her self-respect. He also added his micro-sausage wasn't worthy of being the first visitor to her cave of wonders, and advised that she do it with someone she truly loved. Karen tried to argue with him, but he didn't give her the chance, so she started talking about how she and the others were special to him. It was at that moment that Sod realized they hadn't banged each other yet, so he began complaining. Asahi told the misconstructed rabbit to shut up and said he was wrong to disregard Karen's feelings because he wanted the world to be saved. While he was speaking, Karen stared at him in awe, and surprisingly the meter began to rise. Unfortunately, Asahi's speech was cut short by the mini-ball takers, who started hitting the van. Immediately, he told Sod that he would create a diversion and asked him to get Karen somewhere safe. He jumped out of the van without hesitating and started running as the ball takers chased him. Soon after he left, Karen admitted to Sod that seeing the way Asahi cared for her made her feel warm inside. As she said this, the meter rose in the next moment. The van exploded from the power radiating off Karen. The blast also destroyed the ball takers about to turn Asha into a eunuch, and when he looked up, he saw a new and improved Karen. Karen approached the large ball taker and unleashed her power, but the machine fought back. Just as Karen was about to be pushed back, Asahi suddenly grabbed hold of her staff and helped her destroy the machine, thus saving the world. With the big machine gone, the smaller ones vanished and Yoshio's manhood was returned to him. After that, Karen returned to her normal form, and Asahi praised her for a job well done. But how he smiled unlocked a memory in her. The memory confused her, so when Asahi tried to touch her, she panicked and ran off, leaving him wondering what he had done wrong. About 2 weeks later, Asahi and the girls waited outside their house with Yoshio for a car to pick them up. This was because they were going on a trip to the private beach owned by Yoshio's family. Unfortunately, Yoshio was hit by the car when it pulled up and had to be taken to the hospital while Asahi and the girls went to the beach without him. When they arrived, they checked out the beach house before heading to the beach for a fun-filled day. Later in the evening, the group packed their things and began walking back to the house. During their walk, Asahi suddenly noticed that the girls had vanished like the Avatar. Thinking they were teasing him, he checked around the beach, but when he still couldn't find them, he went to check the house. However, the house was as empty as Patrick's head, so he decided to call them. Before he could do that, Aoi, who hadn't traveled to the beach with the group, suddenly appeared behind him. She asked Asahi why he looked worried, and he told her it was because he couldn't find the others. Surprisingly, Aoi responded by asking who he was talking about, which confused him. Suddenly, it was as if the memories of the other girls had been erased from his mind, because he began asking Aoi what he'd been talking about. Aoi laughed and told him he was probably tired from spending the entire day at the beach. They then walked into the house, and as Aoi began preparing dinner, she asked Asahi to start a fire outside since they would eat on the patio. While he did that, Aoi continued with her cooking, but was disturbed by Asahi's phone, which kept vibrating because Yoshio was calling. Instead of informing Asahi, Aoi took the phone and broke it before tossing it in the trash can and carrying on with her business. Soon the meal was ready, and after they ate, they sat by the fire enjoying the light breeze until Aoi mentioned it was quiet. Asahi responded that it was nice to have quiet moments occasionally, but as soon as the words left his mouth, he suddenly remembered the other girls. However, the memories left almost as soon as they came, and Aoi, unaware of this, asked him to accompany her somewhere. She took him to a place with a lake and a large cherry blossom tree, and as they stood side by side, she confessed her feelings to him again. Suddenly, she pushed him to the ground and straddled him as she begged him only to love her and no one else. Her words brought the memory of Mongfa and the others back to Asahi's mind, so he got up and demanded to know where they were. This left Aoi disappointed, and as Asahi watched her, the flowers on the tree surrounded her. When the flowers disappeared, Aoi was gone, and a girl Asahi referred to as Ad was in her place. Asahi was surprised to see her, and when he started questioning her, she cut him off and asked him never to come to that place again. Before Asahi could ask why, she ran off, and he was suddenly surrounded by error screens as the entire place began to disintegrate. The next moment, he awoke in his bedroom, and Loveland, his alarm clock, told him if he didn't move, he'd be late for bed. Immediately, he got out of bed, got dressed, and rushed out of the house, thinking the girls had already gone ahead to school with him. In his mad dash, he didn't notice that the house was different, and that his mother was home. When he arrived at school later, he saw a boy sitting at his desk, so he politely asked him to stand up. The boy was confused by his request and told him that the desk was his. The most surprising part was that the boy had no idea who Asahi was, and when Asahi asked him about the girls, he also didn't know who they were. None of his classmates knew who they were, which confused Asahi, so he rushed out of the classroom to look for them. The first place he visited was where Aoi confessed to him on the day they met. However, the cherry blossom tree had been replaced with a different tree. As he tried to understand what was happening, a woman in a lab coat approached him. She convinced Asahi to come with her to a lab and assured him that he would get to see the girls there. When they arrived, she introduced herself as Yoshino Feynman and asked Asahi if he remembered her, but he didn't. She then showed him an online ad and a small camera, which did the trick. It so happened that Asahi had signed up to participate in a virtual reality experiment, and Yoshino was his handler. When she finally explained that he'd been in the Matrix the entire time, Asahi didn't believe her. He argued that the girls and everything he had experienced and lived through for the past few months had been real. Yoshino told him they weren't and said the girls were all A's programmed to interact with him in the virtual world. She also revealed that she'd been monitoring his progress in the virtual world as Yoshio. However, she was forcefully logged out of the system on the day Yoshio was hit by a car, and since then, she hasn't been able to log back in. This revelation was too much for Asahi to handle, and he started lashing out at Yoshino, saying she was lying. Yoshino told him to wake up to reality, because everything she said was the truth, and deep down he knew it too. Feeling lost, Asahi collapsed in the chair, but before Yoshino could say anything else to him, her colleague Yubikata walked in. Yubikata scolded Yoshino for coming to work and bringing Asahi with her when their director instructed her to stay away from the lab. She had been suspended for conducting the experiment in which Asahi was involved without the approval of the higher-ups. Yoshino explained that she'd wanted to investigate why the system had logged them all out. After leaving the facility, Yoshino took Asahi to a nearby cafe where she told him of an AI with artificial consciousness, developed by a brilliant scientist before his death. She said that the AI developed more as the years passed, and was used to create most of the world's AIs, including Monfa and the other girls. This mother AI was named after the scientist's daughter because the man had copied his daughter's brain data to develop it. After hearing this, Asahi became broken because I was his childhood best friend, and she had died after a prolonged illness. Without a word, he left Yoshino and went straight to the graveyard where he stood before Ai's grave and cried like a baby. Meanwhile, as Yoshino walked home, she noticed Aoi's image showed briefly on all the screens before everything stopped working. The next day, most of the gadgets, cars, and systems that were affected were restored by the scientists at Monfa's lab. However, they were worried the systems would crash again. So Yubutaka suggested they call Yoshino, but the director told her to shut up. Since the AA's data was in a space satellite, the directors said they would have to dispose of the satellite if they couldn't regain control of the system. Despite the director refusing to involve Yoshino, Yubutaka called her and told her what was happening. This prompted Yoshino to visit Asahi and ask him to return to the virtual world, because she had deduced that Aoi was responsible for the system disruption worldwide. Asahi didn't believe her, so she explained that Ai's consciousness, which had been buried deep inside Aoi, had awakened, and said that the coexistence of those two consciousnesses caused Aoi to go berserk. She also told him about the satellite and said all attempts to regain control of it had been futile. However, she was sure that Asahi would be granted access to that world because the satellite sent a message. The message simply said, "I want to see you." And as far as Yoshino was concerned, it was a message for Asahi. Just as she tried to convince Asahi to return to the virtual world, Lovelin the clock started bouncing around the room before projecting something on the wall. The projection was from the virtual world and was a projection of Karen, Monfa, Irina, and Amelia. At first, they resembled low-budget Roblox characters, but Amelia did some tweaking so their true forms showed. The girls told Asahi how much they missed him and completely ignored Yoshino like your crush ignores your existence. However, she spoke up and asked where they were. The girls explained that Amelia sensed something was off just before Aoi forcefully logged them out, so Karen used her powers to transport them somewhere safe. They then pleaded with Asahi to return, saying he was the only one who could save and stop Aoi before it was too late. While they were still pleading with Asahi, Yoshino received a call from Yubikata, who informed her that it had been decided that the satellite would be destroyed. Suddenly, the signal for projection was lost and Asahi and Yoshino heard a loud crash outside. The power also went out and Yoshio told Asahi that Aoi was behind it. She asked him to go with her so she could send him back to the virtual world, but Asahi refused. She tried to change his mind by telling him about the eraser program that would wipe all the data in the satellite, but Asahi still refused to go with her. Having no choice, Yoshino left, hoping there was something she could do alone to stop Aoi from plunging the world into chaos. As Asahi sat alone in his room, he recalled the time he'd asked Ai what she'd do if she were given a chance to see someone who had passed on. I had told him she would see the person even if it was for only a second. This made Asahi change his mind, so he rushed outside to meet Yoshino before she got on her bike. Yoshino then took him to Ai's father's lab, since she was the only person who had access to it after he passed away. Once there, Yoshino fired up the computers and hooked Asahi to the virtual world. Asahi soon found himself in a dark environment and was surprised that Yoshino had followed him into that world as Lovelin. The first obstacle they encountered was the protective wall Aoi, set up to prevent all contact from outside. However, the program recognized Asahi and granted him access to the virtual world. Once they were in, Yoshino changed from Lovelin to Yoshio, since it was the best way for her to move about. Soon after this, some cleaning robots and stray dogs began chasing them, and Yoshio warned that if they caught them, they would forcefully log them out. They kept running until Asahi heard the girls calling him from a nearby pond, so he grabbed Yoshio and jumped in the water. The two soon found themselves in Asahi's bedroom in the virtual world, where the girls had been hiding all along. The girls were so happy to see Asahi, but when they realized that both he and Yoshio were butt naked, they slapped them for being shameless exhibitionists. Eventually, Asahi dressed, but Yoshio started acting strangely until he vomited a large egg and died. The egg hatched and Saad emerged from it, but since they now knew it was Yoshino, they ignored him. As the girls started clinging to Asahi like colas, Saad reminded them why they were there, so they let him go. Amelia showed them the virtual world map and told them that Aoi was at the center of it. The only way to get to her was through a specific path, but they would have to fight off Aoi's programs trying to log them out and the eraser program the scientists had uploaded to erase the data in the satellite. However, they were prepared to proceed with the plan because they wanted to save Aoi. After making a few more plans, they ventured into the virtual world and found themselves in the place where Asahi had been held captive before. They encountered the logout programs as they tried to find a way out, so the girls geared up to fight. Monfa changed into her combat outfit, while Karen, Amelia, and Irina transformed into magical girls. During the fight, The eraser program the scientists had uploaded arrived and infected Aoi's logout programs to hasten the erasing process. As the group fought them off, Sat was captured and deleted, leaving Asahi and the girls to handle the situation alone. The group fought off the robots and continued running towards where they knew Aoi was. But before they could reach the door, the man who kidnapped Asahi blocked their path. Thankfully, Mongfa got rid of him before he could harm them, allowing them to proceed. As Amelia punched in the code to open the door to Aoi, the eraser programs arrived and started erasing everything. Asahi and Mongfa then pulled on a lever which opened the door, allowing them to pass through it. Unfortunately, they discovered no control panel on the other side, so they couldn't close the door. Because of this, Mongfa told the group to go ahead, stating that she would remain and fight the erasers. When Asahi tried to convince her to change her mind, she told him she was doing it because she loved him. She explained that after she'd unlocked A's memories buried inside her, she finally understood what love was, which was why she was willing to lay down her life for him. She kissed him when he attempted to speak and pushed him through the door. Asahi tried to pull her along with him, but he only succeeded in grabbing her hair ribbon. Once he was on the other side, the door closed and Mongfa began fighting the robots. She managed to hold out for a while, but in the end, she was erased and the ribbon in Asahi's hand disappeared. After briefly mourning the loss of their friend, Asahi and the girls passed through the next door and found themselves at school. As they tried to locate the next door, they were attacked by one of the erasers, allowing Karin to destroy the robot with her powers. The next moment, Irina cried out because she noticed Asahi was injured, so they went to a class and dressed the wound. Irina scolded Asahi for trying to play the hero and reminded him that his physical body would feel whatever pain he felt in the virtual world. Once Irina was done dressing his wound, Asahi asked Amelia if she'd located the next door. Amelia told him she was still searching and would take a while to finish scanning for it. Since they had nothing to do but wait, Karin and Irina asked Asahi what school was like in the real world. Asahi admitted that he hadn't been at school for months because he had been depressed about A's death. He found the ad during his free trial period as a NEET and decided to join Yoshino's experiment. After hearing this, the girls felt sorry for him, but he assured them he was fine now. Just then, Amelia informed them that she'd located the next door, so they made their way there. The door let them outside, and they were astonished to see that the entire world was in chaos. They also noted that an army of erasers was heading their way, so Karin and Irina volunteered to draw their attention. As he'd done with Mongfa, Asahi protested, but the girls convinced him it was the only way. They charged Amelia with getting him to the final door, and then went ahead to fight the eraser robots. While the battle raged in the sky, Asahi and Amelia passed through the next door and found themselves in a library. After walking around for a while, Amelia saw an elevator behind a bookshelf. The two got on the elevator, and as it went down, Amelia told Asahi she fell in love with him on the night he comforted her after their fight in the library. She said his words had unlocked A's memories, which were buried in her mind and triggered her feelings. This was because she finally understood the kind of person he was. Outside, Karin and Irina exchanged stories of the moment they fell in love with Asahi. Just like Mongfa and Amelia, it was after A's memories unlocked in their minds. Both girls were happy they got to experience that feeling, but said they were sad that they never got to tell Asahi how they felt. However, they decided to send him a final message through Amelia to let him know how they felt before continuing their fight with the robots. Back inside the library, Amelia received their messages and knew her friends were gone. She then played these messages for Asahi, and after listening to the messages, Asahi cried. Amelia encouraged him to be strong as Ai and Aoi were counting on him to save them. She also told him she couldn't go with him, causing him to protest, but she shut up with a kiss and then sent him through the final door. Asahi screamed as he fell, but Amelia maintained a smile as the door closed and the robots surrounded her. Asahi found himself on a path in the forest, so he followed it and walked to the beach, where Aoi was waiting for him. When Aoi saw him, she apologized for everything and Asahi told her he wasn't mad at her. He asked where I was, saying he wanted to see her, so Aoi pulled his head to her chest to share his memories with him. The first memory was a few days before I discovered she was sick. She and Asahi had gone to the mall after school, and while they were shopping, Asahi noticed Ai staring at a particular necklace. He'd asked her if she wanted to buy it, but she told him she couldn't afford it. Later, when they were leaving the mall, Asahi excused himself to go to the bathroom. However, he returned with the necklace Ai had been looking at. He told her it was an early Christmas present, and Ai excitedly asked him to put it around her neck. After that, she thanked him for the gift and told him it was time to head home. When she tried to move, she suddenly felt dizzy and had to rest her head on Asahi's shoulder to steady herself. Asahi became worried, but Ai assured him she was fine, so he didn't say anything else. Later that night, I waited for her father to return, and when he did, she got up to prepare his dinner. Unfortunately, she never made it to the kitchen because she fainted after taking a few steps and was rushed to the hospital. A few days later, I and her father were informed by a doctor that she was terminally ill and didn't have much time left to live. A's father had been distraught and demanded that the doctor do something to save his precious daughter, but I told him she was ready to face whatever was coming. Soon after that, she was admitted to the hospital, and when Asahi heard about it, he came running to see her. I told him not to worry and swore that her illness wasn't serious because she couldn't bear to tell him the truth. She only asked him if he would see the cherry blossom trees with her when spring came. He said yes. A's condition worsened as the months passed, but she soldiered on and acted tough whenever Asahi was around. She also put on makeup on the days he came to visit because she didn't want him to know how bad her condition was. One day, she asked Asahi not to visit her again, and when he asked why, she told him she wanted him to concentrate on studying for his exams. Asahi thought her reason was valid, so he promised to visit her once exams were over, not realizing that was the last time he'd see her alive. On the day she died, I felt alone and tried to call Asahi, but stopped herself when she watched a video of him on her phone. Ultimately, she typed out a text telling him she missed him and couldn't wait to see the cherry blossoms with him. Asahi stood outside her room watching her as she wrote this message, and Aoi, who was acting as his guide in Ai's memories, pointed at a door, saying that I was waiting for him behind it. Asahi opened the door and walked in to find Ai by a cherry blossom tree waiting for him. I was happy to see him, and they both hugged each other affectionately. However, when they separated, I told Asahi that he had to forget about her and move on with his life, because it was the only way for him to be happy. Asahi talked about a few memories they shared before he broke down in tears and told her that forgetting her would be impossible. He said he had so many fond memories of her, because they had been as thick as thieves since they were kids, and he wasn't ready to forget the moments they spent together. While speaking, he admitted that his time with Mongfa and the others had taught him never to give up on what he liked. After saying this, he admitted to Ai that he had loved her since they were kids and apologized for not telling her sooner. Hearing his confession made Ai start crying, and she admitted that she also loved him, but had been afraid to tell him. She said she pushed him away during her final days because she'd been sad that they would never get to be together forever. Soon after Ai's confession, the place became bright and sunny, and as Asahi held her in his arms, he leaned in slowly and kissed her. While they kissed, their shared memories played in their minds until they separated and Ai began to fade away. Before she said her final goodbye, she gave Asahi her necklace and told him she was glad her dream had come true. This made him remember when they were kids sitting on a tree and Ai had whispered something in his ear before kissing his cheek. With Ai gone, Asahi returned to the beach where Aoi helped him return to the real world. A few years later, Asahi was admitted into college and made new friends. After leaving his friends, he went to the cemetery to leave some flowers at Ai's grave before heading home. At home, he found 4 boxes waiting for him, and just as he was about to open one, Amelia popped out of it and hugged him. Karen, Mongfa, and Irina also popped out of the other 4 boxes, surprising him. When he asked how they were there, they told him that Yoshino had extracted their data before the satellite was destroyed and uploaded them into new bodies. The girls were so happy to finally be reunited with him that they refused to let go of him and clung to him. Aoi was the last one to arrive, because she told Yoshino that she wanted to find Asahi in the real world by herself, and after that, they all lived happily ever after. That's it for today's video. If you got this far, let us know by commenting milkshakes. Don't forget to check out our channel to see if your favorite anime has been recapped.